morning. It is morning huddle time.
A sense of belonging in a company actually increases job performance by 56%.
It's like a lot of times all of that 3D data is there. They've done the work. They've done the engineering. They've done the slopes. They've done all the 3D polylines are already in their file. There's just a huge disconnect between what they do and the builders right now.
113,000 available unfilled construction jobs in this country, 11 million available unfilled jobs overall in this country.
One of the great culture things I see in construction is people just get it done. At the end of the day, we build 100% of the building. There's no 80-20 rule.
Think of the technology that has been brought into existence in the last 60 years, and you think of the productivity gains that have, say, occurred in agriculture, which is up 1,750%, or manufacturing, which is up 400%, and construction is flat to negative.
This was always supposed to just be a 6-episode mini-series, Stacy. I want to remind you of that.
All right. Good morning.
And surprise, you're not Chad Prinky.
I am not Chad Prinky. Chad is not going to be here today, so you get me. I am Matt Verderamo, and I'm here with Stacy Holsinger, and welcome to another edition of the Morning Huddle.
Yeah, welcome everybody. So Chad is out in the Poconos, I believe, somewhere, right? Fishing?
At the cabin. I don't know exactly where it is. It's kind of this mythical place. It's the cabin.
Yeah, the cabin. Needed some downtime. No internet, no nothing. We gave him a little break here. So nice to have you, Matt. And
Thank you very much.
You work with Chad. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do with Chad at Wellbuilt?
Sure. So I'm going to answer that question, but I might give you the brief background first, too, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And so basically, I'll start at college, and then I'll get to Chad, and I'll tell a few things in between. But
nice.
I went to the University of Maryland, civil engineering degree, and I interned for a general contractor for a couple of summers, large national general contractor. I was trying to decide what I wanted to do when I got out of school, and ultimately decided to go into subcontracting. Started out as a project manager and estimator with a subcontractor in Baltimore. Great experience. Ended up working my way up to the vice president of pre-construction and sales at the business. During that time, I got my master's from Purdue in construction management part-time, and basically started to fall in love with this whole idea of strategic planning and organizational development. And Chad and I had met and at an ABC event and stayed in touch, and sort of went from being colleagues to becoming friends. And he started Wellbuilt a couple of years ago, which obviously is totally focused on building strategic plans and helping build construction businesses. So our missions just totally aligned. And he asked me to join the team as a consultant. So that is where I am today. I'm in week 8 of working with Wellbuilt. And I'm working with clients, subcontractors, and general contractors, helping them be better businesses, have happier clients, and happier employees.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've been following you on LinkedIn for probably a couple years now. So I can totally see the alignment between the two of you and your passion for just creating positive change and working with people and building teams. So that's awesome. So we're happy to have you, and I'm happy that you're filling in today. Do you want to talk about who we have on the show?
Yes. So today, and should I bring Michael on?
Sure.
Cool. All right, let's bring him on. Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Good morning, Matt. Good morning, Stacy. How you doing?
Good.
Great to see you. Great to see you. For everybody that doesn't know, Michael has been on the show before. Mm-hmm. So he has actually been on the show more times than I have been. So we got that going for us. He's going to help me survive today. But in general, Michael is a construction attorney that works with subcontractors, general contractors, and developers. Everything from contract negotiation all the way to complex litigation. Obviously, he hopes, and we hope, that it doesn't get to that point. But yeah, that's the general overview. Michael, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so like you said, I'm a construction and government contracts attorney here at Seyfarth Shaw. I'm based in our Washington, D.C. office and practice primarily in the Mid-Atlantic, but also throughout the country. And like you said, I also, I'm involved in contract negotiation and drafting for multiple different project delivery methods: design, bid, build, EPC, and various others, including MP3 as well. So I've done a lot of complex agreements and represent owners, general contractors, subcontractors, provide project counseling advice during construction projects, any issues that might come up, including change orders and delays, different site conditions, the wide range of issues that come up during a construction project. And then finally, I handle complex litigation arising out of construction. So that could be payment disputes all the way to delay issues to construction defect matters.
Which unfortunately happens more often than any of us would like, I'm sure.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Michael's been on the show before, and we had such a good conversation last time that we wanted to bring him back on. As we said, today, you heard all of his expertise and everything that he does. We're really going to focus on going down two different paths here. The first one is, can contractors, whether you're a general contractor or subcontractor, actually negotiate your contracts? And a little bit on how to do that, what to do, what to look for. The other one is, when a project goes off the rails and you're starting to recognize that as a contractor, what are some of the things to look for, and what are some of the things that you need to be doing to protect yourself when you do? So with that said, I think we can probably jump in and get started. For anyone that's listening and in the chat, we'd love to get you asking questions and interacting with us. Stacy's going to be hopping off the call and interacting with you guys, and she'll be hopping back on at the end to ask any questions that you guys put into the chat. So Stacy, unless you have anything else, let's have a great conversation in the chat and we can get started.
All right, sounds good. See you guys soon.
Cool. Thanks, Stacy. All right, so let's jump in.
I'm ready.
I think this is a funny question because it's so obvious, but it's worth talking about because not everybody does it. And it's, should contractors, again, whether general contractors or subcontractors, be negotiating their contracts? And if so, how do they do it? What should they be doing?
Yeah, so the simple answer to that is yes, absolutely.
Good.
I think, depending on the size of the project, the work involved, you're always going to want to negotiate your contracts, review them, see where the risk is really being allocated, whether it's, in the changes clause, in the site disclaimers clauses. You always want to review your contract to see what it was, what's going on there. But depending on the size of the project, the scope of work, the amount of risk involved, you might not be making as many edits as you would where there's a lot of risk, or it's a huge mega project. So you really have to tailor your negotiations and edits to the specific instance or to the specific project. So the answer is yes, definitely. It just really is a question of how much you're going to negotiate, how firm you're going to stand on some of the issues, and where the give and take is going to be.
Got it. And all of those are essentially organizational decisions, right?
Yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of business decisions involved. As attorneys, as construction attorneys, we're going to advise you on where the risk is, and at that point, it's really up to the principals, to the owners, to the decision makers to determine how much risk they're willing to take on at that point, and really where they want to push back. So yeah, there is a lot of business decision making in contract negotiations.
How much risk are you willing to take on? Even the types of projects that you're going after, it's different when you're negotiating a multifamily project versus a government contract, or design build, like you said too. I'm sure all of that's totally different depending on what kind of protections you need. Your relationship with the general contractor or owner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I have talked a little about it, and I truly believe, my philosophy is that construction is a business of relationships. and you're building on those relationships. General contractors are going to have relationships with owners. Subcontractors are going to have relationships with general contractors, and there's got to be a collaborative approach to each project. Although it's not specifically labeled as a partnership, you should approach it that way. The general contractor is partnering with the owner to deliver a successful project, and then the trade contractors are partnering with the general contractor to make that project come to fruition and make sure everybody's happy. And the same approach, that's really has to be the starting point, in my opinion, to bring about a successful project. Is when you're in the contract negotiations, when you're looking at that risk, is there's got to be a collaborative approach and a partnership where there is some give and take. You've got to listen to concerns and address those concerns and make sure that there's a fair or equitable risk sharing relationship, or that everyone can really deal with and live with.
So, and that's all really good stuff. So let's imagine that you and I have a good relationship, and you're a general contractor and I'm a subcontractor.
Sure.
And you send me your contract. Do you have any advice for me as I'm sending you comments and negotiating this agreement with you to preserve the relationship and to position myself as a collaborator with you rather than an adversary? Because again, we've talked about this too. I think a lot of people think I'm not supposed to negotiate contracts because that means I'm fighting with my client. And we've talked about that's not necessarily what that means. So how do I position myself as that collaborator instead of that adversary?
Yeah, so I think when you receive a contract in, it's typically going to be a form. It's going to be something that's been prepared and has been used multiple times. And I think you need to look at that form as a starting point for the negotiations, where, you need to take that and look what's fair, what's unfair, and then develop your list of things that really need to be negotiated. And in terms of negotiations, in terms of preserving that relationship, I'd really recommend that you try to have a sit down, you schedule a meeting. Matt, you posted something on LinkedIn the other day that in the construction industry, we really need to have people picking up the phone and working through issues rather than sending the nasty email or the email that's really entrenched in a position. Pick up the phone, set a meeting, try to work through these issues and get that collaborative approach going from the beginning. I always have the saying that, take the poison out of the pen. Try not to
love that.
Send the email that's going to cause people to react in a negative way. So that's the first step is identifying the issues, what you can live with, getting on the phone, setting a meeting and saying, look, this is going to be tough for us to handle. This is going to be tough for us to deal with. What can we do? And, your attorney or in-house counsel or risk manager, they're going to have some approaches that you can use that are fair and reasonable to everyone involved and should be accepted. And I'll run through some basic things that you should start looking for in a contract.
Yes, please.
What I always start with is the statutory protections. So what I mean by that is, you've got to look in your jurisdiction, whether you're operating in Maryland, DC, Virginia, and see what they say on the various contract clauses and how they interpret those clauses and what's allowed in that state, versus what's not allowed. So what I first go to is the payment clause. Most jurisdictions are going to have a payment statute, a prompt payment statute, where payment has to be made within a certain amount of time. For example, 10 days, 7 days, 15 days. It's going to vary from jurisdiction. So you want to check that, number one. Oftentimes I'll see a contract come in and it's going to have payment terms that are 30 days. Well, that's in violation of the statute.
Wow.
And so you can immediately go back to whatever entity you're negotiating with and say, hey, here's the statute. It says I'm to be paid in 7 days of your receipt of payment, or whatever the statute says. We need to abide by that. You really can't object to that. So, I mean, it's in law. So you kind of have to go with it.
I'm sure you're going to touch on it. So how does that affect pay when paid?
Sure. Yeah. So multiple jurisdictions are, it's really a hot topic right now. I think it was addressed in one of the earlier episodes. But for example, in Virginia, they just entered a prohibition on pay if paid clauses, that those are no longer enforceable in Virginia. And there's various caveats to that I could explain and go into, but you want to look for that as well. Is there a prohibition on a conditional payment clause, which makes the general contractor's condition, receipt of payment conditional to your receipt of payment? And that of course flows down a subcontractor negotiating with a supplier in a jurisdiction where that's prohibited. You can't include that clause either. So those are things that you want to check what your state statute says regarding payment, and then that's a starting point for the negotiation to try and tailor that payment clause to what is required.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Any other couple of things that you want people to be looking for in their contracts, things they should be trying to negotiate?
Yeah, the same thing is retainage. There's going to be retainage statutes out there. For example, typically the typical is 10% in most jurisdictions. Maryland, I believe, is down to 5% at this point. And then you just want to check that statute to see what retainage is, to make sure you're getting as much money as you can in the door up front, rather than having to wait towards the end of the project. A key thing I definitely recommend you always look at is the site disclaimers. And you're going to have to look, various places. You're going to have to look in the specs. You're going to have to look in your subcontract or contract. You're going to have to look at the drawings, because there's going to be the site disclaimers basically littered throughout those contract documents. And site disclaimers are generally an attempt to put on the contractor or subcontractor more risk and more responsibility for picking up issues such as concealed conditions, different site conditions. So I always look for those as well when I'm negotiating a contract.
Would that be even things like access, like lay down space where you can put your materials on site if they're giving you 48 hours instead of a reasonable amount of time, or if everything's got to be on carts, or if they're not providing you access, it's a tight site and you need a boom lift? Is it those kinds of things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, access is often addressed in contracts and specifications. So you want to make sure you're looking out for that.
And those are huge. That can cost you a ton of money if you're just not aware.
Yeah, I mean, access issues, on the topic of when a project gets derailed, access is a huge issue. And it can cause the planning and sequencing and can completely disrupt a schedule. So it's definitely something you want to plan for and look out for when you're in the contract negotiation stage.
Yeah, totally.
And then the last really tip is you absolutely want to look at the change order process and then the disputes provision. Those are definitely key contract clauses. And typically what I see negotiated in those types of clauses are the timing for submittal of a change order or submittal of a claim. Typically the higher tier party is going to want to limit the amount of time. I've seen 2 days, 3 days, 48 hours. Whereas the lower tier party is going to want to have more time to be able to assess the change and put together the package and the supporting documents. So that's something typically that can be negotiated. That's really a business decision. How much time am I going to need to provide notice of a claim and then ultimately submit my claim with the supporting information.
That's really good too.
So, and then, some of the things I'll typically see in a change order clause are, if you don't submit within this time, your claim is waived. that's kind of a tough clause. So you want to look for those and see if those can be handled or dealt with.
That's great advice because payment and change orders, probably things that we all deal with every day that are on this call,
Yeah, for sure.
Those are great. And I want to say one last thing, because I think this is a good anecdote for anybody that's listening too. And then we'll jump into projects going off the rails. But I was talking to a project exec one time, and he was talking to a subcontractor who was negotiating an agreement with him. I think it was the owner of the business. And basically the owner of the subcontractor said to his client, in this contract, you are asking me to be timely, professional, abide by rules and regulations, and in general, a good partner.
Yep.
But as you're telling me that, you're also asking me not to negotiate the contract agreement, which would be a totally unprofessional thing of me to do. So just remember, everybody, as a little extra kick in the butt, that you are supposed to be that professional service provider like you are the business that you're running. And this is just, a part of doing it and creating fair partnerships and collaboration. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Matt. I mean, you need to negotiate the contracts. You need to read them and understand them. Don't just flat out sign something under pressure.
Exactly.
Depending on who you're negotiating with, you might not get as far as you want to, but at least let them know you're thinking of the issues and see what you can come up with.
That's a very good point too. So now that's the nice uplifting thing. So now we're on a project and we're recognizing it's going off the rails, which I think, again, whether you're a sub or a GC, you've seen it happen. What are some of the things that you look for to know that a job's going off the rails, Michael? And then maybe you can get into what you should be doing to protect yourself when you recognize that a job is going off the rails.
Sure. So I think that you're going to notice that a job is going off the rails when the budget's getting out of control. It's just getting exceeded. The project management is not, going well. The documents aren't under control. There's, not a good meeting schedule. People aren't communicating and working together. And then you're going to notice that there's a lot of schedule slippage. I mean, that's probably obvious, but time and money, those two things, you see them slipping or increasing. I think that's when you absolutely know you have a problem and need to figure out how to implement ways to deal with that. And I think, we started this conversation talking about contract negotiation, and you've got to go back to your contract and see what it says on how to handle some of these issues.
You're right, because the idea is that you put the contract in a drawer and nobody ever looks at it again. But when does everybody look at the contract? When there's problems.
Correct.
So it's one of those things that now you're 6 months after you did the negotiation, and maybe it was painful then, but now you're 6 months later and you're going, oh, thank goodness I got this clause in there, or got this modified, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the contract should be a live document. You should be looking at it every day, responding to the issues. When a change order comes up, or a condition that was unexpected, unforeseen, you want to go to your contract and say, when do I have to, submit my change order? When do I have to provide notice? When do I need to get my pricing in and supporting documentation? And make sure you're compliant with that. You don't want to be in a position where you've waived that or, you failed to comply, because that could ultimately, once you get to this disputes process, could be a hindrance to recovery. So you absolutely want to be working with that document or all the contract documents on a regular basis. And, I understand it from my position, people are often, they're out there building the project, but, when you come back to the office or the job site trailer, make sure that you're abiding by your contract.
So would it be correct to say that when you recognize that there's time slippage and cost slippage, and you're trying to, and it's not your fault, right? So let's be clear about that too. It's not your fault as the general contractor or the subcontractor. There's something happening up the chain that's causing it. That the playbook for how to handle it is actually the contract. Like that's what you're coming back to on how to respond to any of these issues that may be coming up that may be costing you money, time, resources, or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to make sure you have an avenue of recovery. That you can say, look, I'm experiencing these issues, whether it's, the result of a design error, an emission, a different site condition, weather, concealed conditions, owner-directed changes. There's a wide array of issues that come up in a construction project that I think everybody on this call has experienced at one point in time. And it's, you confront those issues, and then you have an avenue to recover your costs and time for those issues. And you want to make sure you have that through your contract. If you don't, it's tough to recover. You're ultimately likely not going to be able to. So you want to make sure you have that avenue of recovery and you're following the process.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And for my less contract focused people, maybe if we've got project managers or anything like that on the call, the other thing is document. Send your emails. They can be kind. You don't have to make them mean and nasty, but you can say, we were here this day. This wasn't ready. Thank you. And I'm telling you, that stuff will be worth its weight in gold when you get to the end of these jobs that have, very circumstantial conversations going on, and you have this concrete evidence. You'll be really grateful you have it.
Yeah, I mean, project document control is essential.
Oh,
and, everybody does it a little different. Some people have software. Some people just have a drive where they have it organized. But, I cannot stress enough to, organize those documents, make sure they're complete, and that you're establishing a project record that it really supports your case and supports your positions.
I think that's great. Well, we knew this was going to happen, but it's somehow already 9:27. So I think we covered a lot of really good ground. Are you okay with me bringing Stacy back on and getting some questions here, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Before I do that, I am just going to thank our sponsors really quickly. The first of which is Katz Abosch. Katz Abosch is a accounting firm with a deep expertise in construction. They serve the Baltimore and DC markets. They've got financial professionals that know construction really well. And I'll give a quick shout out to Krista Hickman from Katz Abosch, who I sit on a board with. So hi, Krista. Thank you guys for sponsoring the show. The second is Lawrence Law. Lawrence Law is a boutique law firm based in Baltimore that serves the Baltimore and DC metro area as well. I don't personally know Kate, but Chad mentioned to me that it seems like all she does is work with contractors. So apparently she's very active in ABC Baltimore as well. So thank you, Lawrence Law. And the last is Frisco Woodline. So Frisco Woodline is a specialty wood supplier. And this is going to be anything that's really that higher end aesthetic wood product that you would need for your projects. They even have a special services division that works with their mill, and they have some painting capabilities that can do some really neat stuff that can really help you when you're on that more aesthetic specialty side of the wood business. So thank you, Frisco Woodline, as well. All right. Hello, Stacy.
Hi, great conversation. I was just listening in. I think you pretty much covered most of the questions I was trying to generate, and then you hit them. So it was really great. The only thing I can think of is for a subcontractor, how do you become a better negotiator? What resources would you suggest for them to be more comfortable in having those negotiations and conversations?
Yeah, I mean, there are classes you can take on general contract negotiation. I'd encourage you to track some of the industry associations who might put on various seminars on that, or even a short talk one morning or what have you. I often see where those industry associations will have events where you can sign up for and then attend and really understand some of the key contract clauses and become more familiar with them and more comfortable with them. So that's a first step. And then, kind of just by reading the contracts, becoming kind of familiar with some of the forms that are used, whether it's a AIA form or one of the other industry forms, or, having worked with general contractors before, becoming more familiar with their forms, whether it's a bespoke type agreement, and just becoming comfortable as to where things are in those agreements and where you're gonna see them, and then ultimately how to apply those to the situations you're facing.
And when you talked about projects getting off the rail, you talked about cost documents and the schedule. Would you say it's in that order, or it could be either or what, like just warning signs? Like, what is usually the first warning sign? Is it cost?
I generally see you're going to see schedule slippage,
Okay.
and the schedule being pushed out, or deadlines not being met, milestones not being met, and then I think with that, comes the costs, and it could be the result of inadequate planning, sequencing of the work. You don't have enough manpower on the job, or you're running into the various unforeseen conditions or change order issues we've talked about, and it's just pushing you out, and that's going to increase your general conditions, increasing your home office overhead, field office overhead, and so those costs are usually going to follow. But I think generally you're going to start seeing milestones not being met on a project.
Is that when you can renegotiate the contract, or how does that work if there's like an unforeseen, condition?
Typically, so you're not going to be able to negotiate the base contract again, the general terms and conditions you've agreed to,
Mm-hmm.
but you can seek change orders for the various issues that come up if you have entitlement to them under the contract terms and conditions.
Okay. And that happens all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, the change orders
Yeah.
happen all the time. No project is usually perfect, and there's going to be issues that come up, and you're going to have to deal with them either through the change order or disputes process.
And then we have a comment from Tom, but I'm not sure if we know what this is.
Okay.
He said, I just have one very important comment. Always remember the RTFC. Do we know what that stands for? Or Tom, can you let us in?
I don't know if I know RTFC.
Yeah, me either.
Well, sometimes there's a delay in the chat, but if we can get to that one. But yeah, I think that's all the questions I have. Matt, do you have anything?
I have one that might be hard to explain quickly, but I'm still going to ask it anyway because I'm interested. You talked earlier about doing some of the P3 and design build type agreements. I assume that you also would do like lump sum agreements versus like a CM at risk agreement. Would that be accurate to say?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, all the types of contracts or, risk management structures, project delivery methods we handle here at Seifarth. So, whether it's a lump sum agreement or a guaranteed maximum price, cost of the work plus with a GMP,
yeah,
we handle all those types of contracts.
Can you just briefly, because I think probably the most of the general contractors and subcontractors we have on this call probably deal with either lump sum or the GMP structure. Can you just say how the contract is structured differently and how that impacts the way that a general contractor interacts with the owner and how the subcontractor interacts with the general contractor? Is there a little more collaboration on one, a little more leeway? Just kind of how the contract is structured that leads to how that trickles down to the rest of the project.
Yeah, I think lump sum is, what you're going to see in the general contractor to subcontractor relationship. You're going to have a lump sum agreement, and really it's the risk sharing there is that it's all in. Your price is your price. You're supposed to be capturing everything. Whereas with a cost of the work with a guaranteed maximum price, there's more financial information that's being shared. So while you do have a ceiling, I'm guaranteeing my price here, you also have to substantiate your costs that you're utilizing on the project. And the owner is going to be able to see those costs if they want to through some of the audit provisions. So I think it's more of a transparent process there. Whereas within the lump sum, you don't typically have to substantiate your costs. It is what it is. I'm guaranteed this amount for the work, but the downside is you're taking on more risk.
More risk, more reward.
Yep, absolutely.
Great. I think that was awesome. Well, I think this was really great, Michael. You helped me survive, and I think you gave us a lot of really good information, and everybody listening a lot of really good information. So thank you so much for being here. It was seriously great talking to you.
No problem. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Stacy.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
See you, Michael. All right,
And as Tom said, read the freaking contract.
Oh, that is very good advice. RFTC. All right, Tom. Well, I'll work that into my vocabulary too. Stacy, we got just a little bit of cleanup to do. Why don't you tell everybody who we got on the huddle next week?
Yeah, I'm super excited to have my friend and guest, Jason Blackwell. He's from Alabama. We're going to talk about crafting excellence, mastering the trades and the classroom. I know Careers in Construction Month is coming up in October. Jason was a grand prize winner for a CTE instructor and now works for the Department of Education in Alabama and oversees all of their CTE. He is a true Renaissance man. This guy is one of the most interesting guys I've ever met. He's always working on different projects, and he's super not involved on social media. So I'm super happy that he's a guest and honored. He does so many incredible things that we're not seeing, and I'm always encouraging him, like, you're one of those people that needs to be posting. You're such a huge inspiration. So I'm really excited to have him on the show. His stories are incredible. Yeah, so that's who we have on next week. And if you just a reminder to email us at stacyh@steeltoe.com. If you want to get on our email list. And I just saw a question. CT is Career Technical Education. So thank you for pointing that out. I hate to use acronyms. I always try to spell them out for people. So that's any trades. Jason is a millwright, so he has dabbled in everything. So we'll talk a lot about career technical education.
You got me fired up for that.
Yeah, awesome.
And as Stacy said, email her to get added to the mailing list. I'm also sure people can send you a message on LinkedIn if they want to. I'm sure that works. Don't forget, we stream live every Tuesday at 9 a.m. It will typically be Chad and Stacy, not me. So unless you really liked seeing me, and then you can message Chad and tell me don't need to do this anymore. And then last thing is these all get posted to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube after we're finished with them, so you can check them out there. Seriously, Stacy, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for filling in and giving my partner a break. We all need a break.
He deserves it. He deserves it.
He did a great job.
Thanks,
Well,
Stacy.
have a great day.
You too. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
See ya.
See ya.